Hello, what are the ISO 2022 standards and how will they change sort of the movement of money around the globe as we know it? Welcome to today's video. We are going to talk about the ISO 2022 standards. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but this is something that's been in the works for years and years, and there's a little bit of misperception around what this concept actually means. So I'm going to do my best to break it down for you. So the ISO part stands for International Standards Organizations, and these are essentially a set of rules around how to communicate messaging. So when you send money from one place to another, the funds don't just get automatically transferred like through the internet. There's actually a process where messages are sent. The best way I like to look at it is it's almost like you send an invoice, and I've sent my invoice from me to you. That's kind of letting you know I'm either sending you money or requesting money. It doesn't really matter. It's sort of the process. So I'm going to send you this invoice, and you're going to get the invoice, and then you can agree to pay the invoice, and you kind of click paid, and you might type in your credit card number or whatever, and then I get a message back saying, oops, or yay, person, whatever, has paid the invoice. Now that doesn't actually mean that I get the money that instant, right? If you've ever used invoicing for a business, you know that there's often a several day delay for the funds to actually appear in your account. But that first part, that messaging process through the invoicing, is kind of the communication thing that is very important. Now, if every bank and business in the world used a different app for invoicing, it would be kind of chaotic and very inefficient. So many decades ago, the SWIFT system was set up to have everyone use this sort of same platform for messaging around payments. It's very old. It's been around for a long time. It's inefficient. And if you've ever sent money across borders, you know that it's expensive. There's usually a pretty hefty fee, and it can take several days. And this creates a problem actually for banks, because the way they currently pay out the money is through using nostro vostro accounts, and that's Latin meaning ours and yours. And the best way I like to think of it is you sort of have a bank in country 1 and a bank in country 2. And if a person in country 1 wants to send some money to a person in country 2, it goes through the banks. And the bank doesn't actually, they don't send money through the internet. What they do is they have accounts at all these banks around the world. And if person 1 needs to send money to person 2, what the bank does is it basically says, hey bank 2, I got some money in that account over there. Why don't you just take it out of my account and pay her directly? So what happens is all of these banks must have these accounts funded with money all around the globe to support all of these transactions. That is a very expensive deal. It's hard to get an exact number, but my research indicated that we're talking $30 trillion plus. And as global trade has increased a lot over the last couple of years, I imagine that number is even higher. So some serious money is tied up in these nostro vostro accounts. So the banking world would love to free up that money, and so they need a new way to kind of make these cross-border payments possible. And sort of one part of that is to update how the sort of invoicing side of it starts. And they're not invoices, so that's not a perfect analogy. It's just letting you know that things get communicated before the money actually gets settled. And that actually is a good way to bring up these two terms that are important to understand. Payments, which at first thought me if I'm going to pay a bill, I'm literally sending the money. The payment side is really communicating about the messaging. So in this invoicing analogy, the payment side of it would be me sending you the invoice, you receiving it, confirming that you're going to pay it, and sort of sending me back, yep, this is good, I'm paying this invoice. That's the payment side of it, and that's what SWIFT is for, and that's really what ISO 22 is around, is the sort of communication regarding paying transactions. Then when the money actually gets moved, that's called settlement. And sometimes you don't have to settle up like every transaction, because if country 1 and country 2 are doing like 100 transactions back and forth each day, what they can do is like wait to the end of the day and add up the totals on both sides, and they just settle out on the difference. And so that's sort of one way that it's been done to date. So that's where this term settlement comes from. It's like, hey, let's settle up at the end of the workday or whatever. But the cool thing about blockchain, and specifically tech like the XRP ledger and the XRP token, is that they would enable these transactions to be settled instantly. So the banks wouldn't have to have these expensive accounts anymore. They wouldn't have to wait sort of to settle up every day or every couple of days or whatever. So the blockchain is truly going to enable a massive increase in efficiency for this kind of global payment sector. But one of the miscommunications around this ISO 2022 thing is that a token could be ISO 2022 compliant. That's not accurate, because the tokens are used for settlement, and the ISO thing is really around the payment side, the communication side. So the better way to look at it is a company could be involved in this payment space in some way. Like, we'll use Ripple, for example. Like, Ripple has software that supports transactions, and Ripple could, as a company, adopt these standards so that as a company, when their products support communication, they will use the right formatting or whatever it would be described by to make sure these messages are compliant. So the company is adopting these standards, and then the token is simply used as part of the business or the app or the software. So the XRP token is used to support some of Ripple's products, or all of Ripple's used to support Ripple's products, and Ripple could adopt these standards. So the company is more compliant with these standards. It's not really about the token. However, for all intents and purposes, we do kind of refer to a set of the ISO tokens. XRP would be one of them, XLM, XDC are a few others. There's quite a long list. And these are all believed to be tokens that play a role in the next version of the kind of global financial sector. And because banks are involve a lot of money, and they tend to not make decisions very quickly, this ISO migration has been in place for quite a long time. And in the U.S., we're expected to see our first sort of adoption of it or migration to it in November of 2022. But it's not one of those things where the whole world is not using it and then we quickly switch over. I don't think there's like a flip the switch for the ISO 2022 parameters. But we are expected to see that in November, at least in the U.S., we'll see some differences here. Now, there are many other ISO standards. This is just one that refers to global payments and the kind of communication side of it. And so it's going to help not only banks be more efficient, but if you are sending money from one country to another, they call this remittances, that will also become more efficient. And this could potentially replace SWIFT or work alongside SWIFT, or SWIFT is also a company, could adopt these standards as well. So I think we're still looking to see how all of this is going to play out with the current providers and players in the space, with the new sort of tech options via tokenization and blockchain technology. So it is a pretty exciting time to be kind of in the world and paying attention to what's going on, and we're expected to see these changes start in this November of 2022, but throughout 2023 we expect some other places in the world to be turned on as well as this migration sort of reaches its full implementation. So if you want to read more about this, check out my blog post covering this topic in the comments. And if you would like to get more in-depth analysis on geopolitics and blockchain technology, as well as the future of money, check out the 2 Steps Ahead newsletter in the comments as well. You can get your free issue to check it out before you join as a member.